You ever hear a sound so small, so ordinary, that it splits your life into a before and after? For me, it was the soft click of a basement door locking, and it happened on my 67th birthday. Now, birthdays at my age aren't fireworks and champagne. They're quiet, predictable. Maybe a phone call, maybe a grocery store cake if someone remembers. But this year felt different. Daniel had been acting strange for months. Distant, distracted, whispering in other rooms, leaving conversations mid-sentence like his mind was somewhere else. And Alyssa, my daughter-in-law, well, she had that tight smile lately. The kind you wear when you're hiding something. Not mean, not cruel. Just controlled. Too controlled. That evening, around 7 p.m., she walked into the kitchen where I was rinsing coffee mugs. "Margaret," she said sweetly, "can you help me grab something from the basement?" Her voice was smooth, polished, like she'd rehearsed it. I wiped my hands on a towel. Sure. Daniel wasn't home yet, or at least that's what she told me. The basement steps creaked as we walked down, same as they had for the last 28 years. That basement had seen everything: Christmas decorations, Daniel's high school trophies, old photo albums, boxes I never had the heart to open. The air down there always smelled faintly like dust and detergent. The single bulb overhead flickered once. I noticed that. Flicker, pause, steady. Alyssa pointed toward a cardboard box near the far wall. "Can you grab that one?" I bent down, and that's when I heard it. Click. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was final. I straightened slowly, turned around. The door was shut. For a second, I assumed it was an accident. "Alyssa," I called lightly. Door swung closed. Silence. I climbed halfway up the stairs, tried the knob. Locked. I paused. Maybe she didn't realize. "Alyssa?" I said louder. "It's locked." Nothing. That's when something shifted in my chest. A small, cold weight. I checked my pocket. No phone. I'd left it on the kitchen counter. Of course I had. I went back down the stairs slowly. My mind tried to stay rational. Maybe she was grabbing something. Maybe she'd be back in a minute. Maybe this was some kind of surprise. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't an accident. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. No footsteps overhead. No movement. No voices. Just silence. And then, around 8 p.m., music. Laughter. Glasses clinking. I froze. They were upstairs, celebrating, without me. My throat tightened. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Had I done something? Had Daniel decided I was too much, too old, too inconvenient? The laughter grew louder. More people. It sounded like a party. On my birthday. And I was locked in the basement like an old coat nobody wanted anymore. I sat down on the bottom step. The concrete felt cold through my slacks. And something inside me cracked. Because here's the thing about getting older. You start wondering when you stopped being important. When you became background noise in your own family. I replayed every conversation from the last 6 months. Daniel canceling dinners. Alyssa watching me carefully during holidays. The way they'd stop talking when I entered a room. And then something else hit me. The documents. 2 weeks ago, Daniel had casually asked about the house deed, who it was under, whether it had ever been refinanced. I'd thought nothing of it. Now it felt heavier.
Around 9 p.m., I stood up and searched the basement. There was a small window near the ceiling, too narrow to crawl through. Old paint cans, storage shelves, a toolbox. I found a screwdriver, tried to wedge it into the door frame. No luck. The lock was solid, intentional. Who locks their mother-in-law in a basement intentionally? By 10 p.m., the music got louder. I heard Daniel's laugh, clear as day, and that hurt more than the lock.
Because if he knew and didn't stop it, that meant something worse than cruelty. It meant agreement. Around 11 p.m., everything went quiet. The music stopped, voices faded, doors closed. The house settled into silence. And suddenly, the basement felt smaller. The bulb flickered again. I felt my breathing change, shallow, uneven. Then, footsteps, slow, measured, coming down the stairs, each step deliberate. My heart started pounding. The shadow appeared first, then the outline of a man. The lock clicked. The door opened slowly, and standing there was Robert, my ex-husband, the man who disappeared 32 years ago, the man Daniel believed abandoned us. He looked older, grayer, but unmistakably him. My mouth went dry. "This isn't funny," I whispered. He didn't smile. He didn't look amused. He looked guilty. And then I saw her behind him, Alyssa, calm, holding a folder, watching me like this was a courtroom. "Happy birthday, Margaret," she said softly. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" Robert stepped aside. Alyssa walked down slowly, heels echoing on the wooden steps. She handed me the folder. "Open it." My hands trembled. Inside were bank statements, property transfers, legal documents, and one signature that made my blood run cold. Mine, on papers I had never signed. I looked up at her. "What did you do?" Her voice didn't shake. "I didn't do anything." She turned slightly toward Robert. "You did." And that's when I realized this wasn't a prank. This wasn't revenge. This was something much bigger. And whatever it was, it had been waiting for midnight. The basement felt colder after he stepped inside. Robert, 32 years of silence, standing 6 feet in front of me. For a moment, I couldn't even process the anger. It was too big, too old, too tangled up in memories I had buried so deep, I almost convinced myself they weren't real. Alyssa stayed near the stairs, arms folded, watching us like this was some kind of deposition. "Say something," she said quietly. I looked at Robert. "You don't get to show up in my basement on my birthday." His jaw tightened. He didn't argue. "I didn't want to," he said. His voice was rougher now, older. "But this couldn't wait." "Couldn't wait?" I laughed bitterly. "You had 3 decades." He flinched. That gave me a strange sense of power. For years I had imagined this moment, what I'd say, how I'd react. In my fantasies I was calm, composed. In reality, my hands were shaking. Alyssa stepped forward. "This isn't about the past. It's about what's happening now." She tapped the folder in my hands. "Look at page 6. I flipped through it again. Bank statements, transfers, deposits, monthly payments, for years. My chest tightened. "What is this?" Robert spoke before she could. "I've been sending money." "That's impossible." I opened a trust when Daniel was 5. The words hit like ice water. You disappeared. I left because we were destroying each other, he shot back, but I never stopped being his father. I shook my head. You vanished. No calls, no birthday cards.
Nothing. That's not true. I froze. What? Alyssa slid another envelope toward me. Inside were photocopies of certified mail receipts, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my old apartment, all returned to sender, undelivered. I felt dizzy. That address wasn't ours anymore, I whispered. I know, Robert said quietly. You moved. Yes, because men were knocking on my door at midnight asking where you were. Silence fell heavy between us. Alyssa's eyes sharpened slightly at that. What men? She asked. Robert looked down. I didn't. Collectors, I said flatly. Loan sharks. People who didn't send friendly reminders. Alyssa slowly turned to Robert. You never told Daniel that part. Robert's voice dropped. I thought I handled it. You didn't, I snapped.
You ran. He inhaled sharply. And then Alyssa said something that made everything shift. The debt is back. The words felt unreal. Back? I repeated. She nodded. 3 months ago, Daniel got contacted. Contacted how? Email first, then a phone call. My heart started racing. What did they say? That there was an outstanding balance tied to a property asset. I swallowed. My house. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The basement suddenly felt like it was closing in on me. Robert stepped closer, his voice urgent now. That debt was settled. No, Alyssa said calmly. It was bought. Both of us turned toward her. She pulled another document from the folder. It was sold off years ago, then resold, then bundled with other dead assets. She used air quotes.
It's been floating in financial limbo, and someone revived it. For what? I asked. For leverage. The word made my stomach drop. Leverage against who? Against Daniel. My vision blurred for a second. No. Yes, she said firmly. They claim the house deed was used as collateral. I laughed weakly. That's impossible. I would remember signing something like that. Robert looked pale. I might have. The world tilted. What? When things got bad, I used our property as temporary security. You forged my name? His silence was answer enough. My chest felt like it was collapsing. You don't get to destroy my life twice. His voice cracked. I thought I'd fix it before you ever knew. But you didn't. Alyssa stepped in again. And now the people who hold that debt are threatening legal action. Legal, I whispered. Or intimidation, she corrected. The word sent a chill down my spine. I remembered the broken car window in 1994, the slashed tires, the anonymous phone calls where nobody spoke. I had convinced myself it was random. It wasn't random. It was fallout. Why lock me down here? I asked, my voice unsteady. Why not just talk to me? Alyssa held my gaze steadily. Because someone's been watching the house. The air left my lungs. What? We noticed a car parked across the street twice this week. My skin went cold. And tonight? I whispered. Tonight, she said softly, was to make it look like a party. Noise, guests, activity. I slowly understood. The music. was staged. You took my phone, so it couldn't be tracked. The basement didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a bunker. Robert ran a hand through his thinning hair. They wouldn't go after you again. They already did once, I said. Alyssa nodded slowly. That's why we needed to know what you knew. What I knew? She stepped closer now, her voice lower. Did you ever receive settlement papers? A payoff letter? Anything official confirming that the original debt was cleared? I tried to think. Back then, everything was chaos. Bills, threats, fear. I burned most of the letters. I didn't want Daniel seeing them. I didn't want him growing up afraid. No, I whispered. I don't remember anything official. Alyssa's expression darkened. That's what I was afraid of. Robert looked between us. What does that mean? It means, she said carefully, the debt might have never been legally discharged. The room went silent. I felt 20 years older in that moment. You said you handled it, I said to Robert. I paid them, he insisted. In cash? He hesitated. Yes. Alyssa exhaled slowly. There's no paper trail. So what happens now? I asked. She glanced at her watch. It's 12:03. And? At midnight, I moved Daniel's assets. I blinked. What? I transferred everything legally possible out of his name. Robert stared at her. Without telling him? He knows, she said calmly. He agreed. My heart stuttered. Daniel knows about all this? Yes. And he let you lock me down here? She didn't soften. He wanted the truth first. That hurt more than anything else tonight. He didn't come down here. He didn't look me in the eye. He sent her. Because maybe he wasn't sure who to believe. A long silence settled in. Then, a sudden vibration. Alyssa's phone. She glanced at it. Her expression changed. Not fear, not relief. Something sharper. What? I asked. She looked up at us slowly. They just tried to access the trust. Robert's face drained of color. Is it frozen? Yes. She turned the screen toward us, which means one thing. My voice barely worked. What? They're still actively monitoring the account. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about an old mistake. This wasn't about family drama. This wasn't even about money. Someone out there still believed we owed them, and they weren't done. The basement felt too small for the truth that was unfolding inside it. Alyssa's phone screen still glowed in her hand. They tried to access the trust at 12:05, she repeated. Robert was pale. I felt strangely calm, like the kind of calm you get right before a storm hits. And then, footsteps above us. Different this time. Heavier. Familiar. My heart skipped. Daniel. The basement door creaked open wider, and there he was, my son. 6'2", broad shoulders, same hazel eyes he had when he was a little boy, asking me if monsters were real. Right now, he looked like he wasn't sure who the monster was. He didn't come down immediately. He stayed at the top of the stairs, looking at me. Not angry, not warm, just guarded. Mom. That word felt fragile. You knew? I asked softly. He nodded once. Since last week. The air shifted. And you didn't come to me? His jaw tightened. I didn't know what was true.
That cut deeper than yelling would have. I've never lied to you. He looked at Robert. You never told me why he left. The basement went silent. There it was, the crack in the foundation. I swallowed. You were 5. I'm 37 now. Alyssa stepped aside,
letting this become what it always should have been, between mother and son. Daniel came down slowly, each step deliberate. He stopped a few feet away from me. Did he try to come back? The question hung there. I could lie, protect myself, blame Robert completely, but I saw something in Daniel's face. He didn't need a hero. He needed the truth. Yes, I said quietly. His breath hitched slightly. He sent letters. Daniel turned to Robert. Why didn't you fight harder? Robert's voice broke. I thought she hated me. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I did. Silence. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This whole time I thought you just didn't care. Robert's eyes were glossy now. I cared too much. I just handled everything wrong. Daniel turned back to me. And the debt? I felt my throat tighten. I left because men were showing up at the door, I said. His face changed. What? I didn't tell you because you were a kid. Tell me now. So I did. I told him about the gambling, about the threats, about the night someone followed me home from the grocery store, about sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed, about switching schools without explaining why, about changing our phone number 3 times in 1 year. His eyes widened slowly. You never told me any of this. I wanted you to feel normal, I whispered. You wanted me to feel safe, he corrected. And that broke me. Yes. Silence settled again, heavy, emotional, but not hostile. Alyssa cleared her throat gently. There's something else. We all looked at her. She hesitated for the first time tonight. The trust wasn't just accessed. Robert stiffened. What do you mean? She swallowed. They tried to update beneficiary information. My stomach dropped. To who? She looked directly at Daniel. To someone named Victor Hale. The name hit like a gunshot in the dark. Robert's face went white. No. Daniel looked between us. Who is that? I felt ice in my veins. Victor Hale, I said slowly, was Robert's partner. Robert's voice cracked. He disappeared years ago. Alyssa shook her head. No, he didn't disappear. She turned the phone toward us. There's an active LLC under his name, registered 3 months ago. The room felt like it tilted. Daniel stared at the screen. So he's alive. Yes, Alyssa said, and he's the one who revived the debt. Robert leaned against the wall like his legs might give out. He wouldn't. He would, I said quietly, because I remembered Victor. Calm, charming, cold. The kind of man who smiles while calculating your worth. Daniel looked at me. Why didn't you ever tell me about him? Because I thought he was gone. And now? Alyssa's voice was steady. Now he's using your father's old debt as leverage to pull Daniel into something. Daniel's breathing changed. What kind of something? Money laundering, she said plainly. Silence. Robert shook his head violently. No, not my son. That's exactly why, Alyssa replied. Clean name, stable career, no criminal record. He's perfect. Daniel looked sick. They sent me documents to sign last month. My heart stopped. What documents? Investment partnership forms. I didn't understand half of it. Did you sign? Alyssa asked sharply. Daniel shook his head. No, I told them I needed time. Alyssa exhaled in visible relief. Good. I grabbed Daniel's hand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know who to trust. That hurt, but I understood. From his perspective, his father reappears, his mother hid letters, a mysterious debt resurfaces, his wife is investigating something secretly, his entire foundation cracked in weeks. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. For what? For thinking you kept him from me out of selfishness. Tears burned my eyes. I kept you from danger. Robert looked shattered. I created the danger. Daniel looked at him. No, you made mistakes. He paused. But if this Victor guy is targeting us now, that's not a mistake. That's intentional. Alyssa nodded. And he's getting desperate. Daniel looked at her. How do you know? She turned the screen toward him again. Because 30 minutes ago, she zoomed in. There was a failed login attempt to your work email. Daniel's face drained of color. That's not public. Exactly. The basement went quiet. Too quiet. For the first time tonight, fear wasn't theoretical. It was active, watching, trying, reaching. Robert whispered, "He's escalating." Alyssa nodded slowly. Yes. Daniel looked at me. Is that why you think someone's been parked outside? Yes. He inhaled slowly. So this isn't just about money. No, Alyssa said firmly. This is about control. And that's when something shifted inside me. All night I felt like the victim, locked in, cornered, confronted. But now I felt something else. Anger. Not at Robert, not at Daniel, not even at Alyssa. At Victor. At the man who refused to let the past die. At the man who thought he could reach into my family again. I stood up straighter. What's the plan? All three of them looked at me. Alyssa's eyes narrowed slightly. You're not scared? I've been scared before, I said quietly, and I survived it. Daniel squeezed my hand. Alyssa nodded once. Okay then. She locked her phone. Tomorrow we go on offense. And somewhere outside the house, a car engine started, then slowly drove away. The sound of that car driving away stayed with me longer than it should have. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it felt like a warning. We slowly moved upstairs from the basement, like survivors emerging from a bunker. The house felt different now. Not warm, not safe. Exposed. Daniel locked the front door twice, checked the windows, closed the blinds. Robert stood near the kitchen island, restless, like a man realizing the past had finally caught up. Alyssa didn't panic. She got quiet, and that worried me more. She placed her phone on the counter and opened her laptop. What are you doing? Daniel asked. Confirming something, she said calmly. Her fingers moved quickly, focused, precise. I watched her differently now. For months, I thought she was distant, cold, judging me. But this was someone who had been preparing. You knew this might happen, I said softly. She didn't look up. I suspected. Daniel frowned. Since when? She hesitated. 6 months ago.
The room went still. 6 months, I repeated. That's when the trust account pinged for the first time. Robert leaned forward. Why didn't you tell us? Because I didn't have proof, she replied sharply, and I wasn't about to accuse someone based on instinct. Daniel crossed his arms. You've been investigating this without telling me? She finally looked at him. Yes. Hurt flickered across his face.
You didn't trust me? I didn't want to scare you. The irony hit all of us at the same time. I exhaled slowly. That's what I did to him, too. Silence. A generational pattern of protection through secrecy. And it had almost destroyed us. Then Alyssa's laptop chimed. Her face changed. What? Daniel asked quickly. They didn't just try Daniel's email. She turned the screen toward us. There was an access attempt to the house security system. My stomach dropped. But we just installed that. Exactly, she said. Robert muttered under his breath, He's probing. Daniel stepped toward the window and peeked through the blinds. The street looked normal. Too normal. I don't see anyone. That doesn't mean anything, Alyssa replied. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. The room froze. Nobody breathed. It rang again. And again. Daniel looked at her. Answer it. She didn't hesitate. She put it on speaker. Hello? A man's voice came through. Smooth, calm, almost friendly. Well, that was quick. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I knew that voice, even after 30 years. Victor Hale. Robert looked like he'd seen a ghost. Daniel whispered, That's him? I nodded slowly. Victor chuckled softly. Margaret, I was hoping you'd be there. My throat went dry. You should have stayed buried, I said quietly. He laughed lightly. I prefer strategic repositioning. Alyssa's tone turned ice cold. You're accessing accounts illegally. Illegal is such an ugly word, Victor replied smoothly. Let's say creative. Daniel stepped closer to the phone. Leave my family alone. Victor paused. Ah, the son. The way he said it made my skin crawl. You've grown into quite the asset. I'm not signing anything, Daniel said firmly. There was a small pause, then Victor's voice lowered. You think this is about paperwork? The room went silent. A chill crept up my spine. What do you want? I asked. Victor sighed softly. Closure. Robert snapped. You were paid. You were sloppy, Victor corrected. I don't owe you anything. Victor's tone sharpened just slightly. Actually, you owe me everything. And then he said something that made my heart stop. I'm sitting across the street. Daniel ran to the window, slowly parted the blinds, his face drained of color. He's there. A black sedan, parked quietly, engine running. I felt 30 years collapse into one moment. Victor continued calmly over the phone. You always underestimated me, Margaret. Stay away from my son. He laughed. Your son or mine? Robert lunged forward. You leave him out of this. Victor ignored him. Here's what's going to happen, he said smoothly. Tomorrow at noon, Daniel signs the partnership documents. No, Daniel said firmly. Victor's voice hardened. Or I release the collateral paperwork. Daniel looked confused. What collateral?
My stomach turned. Alyssa's expression shifted. "What paperwork?" she demanded. Victor's voice dropped to a whisper. "The document with Margaret's signature." I felt dizzy.
I never signed anything.
"You did," he said calmly. "Digitally." Alyssa's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Victor chuckled softly. "Oh, Alyssa, you're good, but not perfect." My pulse pounded in my ears. "When?" I whispered. 3 months ago," he said. 3 months. That's when Daniel had asked about the deed. That's when Alyssa started investigating. That's when everything began shifting. "You forged it," Alyssa said coldly. Forgery is hard to prove when the metadata says otherwise. The room felt like it was closing in again. Daniel's voice shook. "What does it say?" Victor's answer came calmly. That your mother willingly signed over 60% ownership of the property as settlement guarantee. My legs nearly gave out. "That's a lie!" "Prove it." Silence.
Vera's voice softened again.
"You have until noon." And then the line went dead. Daniel stared at the phone. Robert looked like he might collapse. Alyssa immediately began typing furiously. "He's bluffing," she muttered. "Is he?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Daniel stepped back from the window. "He's still there." We all stood frozen. And then something clicked in my head. 3 months ago, I remembered signing something. An email from Daniel. Subject line, "Insurance Update." He had asked me to review a document for homeowners insurance renewal. I hadn't read it carefully. I trusted him. I signed electronically. My stomach twisted. Oh my God. All 3 of them looked at me. "What?" Daniel asked. I signed something. Alyssa's typing stopped.
What did you sign?
An insurance update. Daniel's eyes widened slowly. "I sent you that." Silence. Alyssa turned toward him slowly. "You sent it from your work email?" "Yes." She inhaled sharply. That's how he got access. Daniel looked like he'd been punched. I didn't know. "I know," I said softly. Victor hadn't just revived a debt. He had infiltrated us, used trust, used familiarity, used family. Robert whispered, "He's always 3 steps ahead." Alyssa's jaw tightened. Not this time. She closed her laptop slowly. Her expression changed. No fear, no hesitation, just resolve. "He wants noon," she said quietly. "Fine." Daniel looked at her. "What are you thinking?" She met his eyes steadily. "We're going to give him exactly what he asked for." And for the first time that night, I saw something dangerous in her smile. Nobody slept, not really. Daniel stayed near the window most of the night. Robert paced like a man waiting for a verdict. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the same cup of cold coffee for hours. And Alyssa? She worked. Laptop open, phone plugged in, files spread out like battle plans. By 3 a.m., she looked up at me. "I need you to trust me," she said quietly. I studied her face. For the first time since she married my son, I didn't see an outsider. I saw a protector. "What are you planning?" I asked. "He thinks he's smarter than everyone," she replied. "Men like Victor always do." Daniel exhaled slowly. "He forged Mom's signature. He hacked my email. He's watching the house. How exactly are we ahead?"
Alyssa closed her laptop. Because he's desperate. Robert shook his head. Victor doesn't panic. Yes, he does, she said firmly. When control slips. She turned the screen toward us. On it was a timeline. Dates, transfers, login attempts, IP addresses. He slipped last night. Daniel leaned closer. That login attempt? She nodded. He didn't route it properly. I traced the origin. Robert's voice dropped. Where? Alyssa met his eyes. 10 minutes from here. Silence. Victor wasn't operating from some offshore network. He was local. Close. Watching. By 8 a.m., the black sedan was gone. By 10 a.m., the house felt too quiet. At 11:30, Alyssa stood up. It's time. Daniel stiffened. We're not actually signing anything. No, she said calmly. We're meeting him. My pulse quickened. Here? She shook her head. Public place, noon. He chose the time. We choose the location. Robert swallowed. He won't expect that. Exactly. 11:58 a.m. The diner. We picked a crowded diner downtown. Bright lights, cameras, people everywhere. Victor was already inside. Of course he was. He sat in a booth near the window, wearing a charcoal suit like this was a business lunch instead of extortion. He hadn't aged the way Robert had. Victor aged like polished steel. He smiled when he saw us. Well, he said smoothly, family reunion. Daniel didn't sit. Neither did Alyssa. I slid into the booth across from him. Robert stayed standing behind me. Victor's eyes flicked to him briefly. Still breathing. Impressive. Robert's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Victor folded his hands calmly. Let's not drag this out. Daniel signs, we all move forward. No, Daniel said flatly. Victor didn't even look surprised. You misunderstand your leverage position. Alyssa calmly placed a folder on the table. Actually, she said softly, you misunderstand yours. Victor's eyes flicked down, mild curiosity. He opened the folder, and for the first time, his smile faded. Inside were printed logs, IP traces, access timestamps, bank routing patterns. Victor's fingers stilled. You made mistakes, Alyssa continued. Small ones, but enough. Victor leaned back slowly. You can't prove intent. No, she agreed calmly. But I can prove unauthorized access, fraud, digital forgery. Daniel added, steady now, and attempted financial coercion. Victor's eyes sharpened. You'd be implicating your father. Robert stepped forward. Do it. Victor looked at him carefully. Robert's voice didn't shake. I'm done running. Silence stretched between them. Victor studied all of us, then his gaze settled on me. You always did choose drama over practicality, Margaret. I leaned forward slightly. No, I chose survival. Alyssa slid one final page across the table. Victor glanced down. His expression changed, barely, but I saw it. What is this? He asked quietly. It's a copy of the original cash withdrawal, Alyssa replied. Robert frowned. What? She looked at him. You paid him, in cash. But you withdrew it from a bank that digitized records 5 years later. Victor's jaw tightened. The timestamp doesn't match your story. Daniel's eyes widened. You lied about the settlement date. Victor stayed silent. Alyssa continued calmly. You told Robert the debt was cleared. It wasn't.
You recycled it into shell accounts. You've been laundering through dead debts for years. Victor's voice turned cold. That's a bold accusation. It's documented, she said, and already sent. Victor's eyes snapped up. Sent where? Alyssa didn't blink. To a federal financial crimes unit. Silence. Heavy. Real. Victor studied her face, searching for doubt. He didn't find any. Daniel crossed his arms. You wanted noon. Victor's calm mask finally cracked just slightly.
You think this ends cleanly? I leaned in closer. It already did. For the first time in 30 years, Victor looked uncertain. He stood slowly, adjusted his cuffs, smiled faintly. This isn't over. Alyssa met his gaze. It is for you. Victor glanced around the diner. Cameras, people, witnesses. He wasn't reckless. He never had been. He gave Robert one long look. You should have stayed small. Robert didn't flinch. You should have stayed gone. Victor turned and walked out. No dramatic scene, no shouting. Just a man realizing control had slipped. That night, the house felt different again, but this time, not exposed, cleared. Daniel sat beside me on the couch. I should have trusted you, he said quietly.
I should have told you everything, I replied. We both smiled faintly. Growth doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet. Robert stood near the doorway. I'll cooperate, he said, if this turns into a case. Daniel looked at him, not angry, not warm, but open. We'll see, he said. That was enough for now. Alyssa walked into the room, exhausted, victorious. She hesitated for a second before speaking. I'm sorry for locking you in the basement. I looked at her. No, I said softly. You were protecting us. She swallowed slightly. I didn't want you to hate me. I stood up slowly, walked toward her. For years, I had seen her as the woman who took my son. But that wasn't true. She was the woman who stood between him and danger. I pulled her into a hug, and for the first time, she hugged me back like family. 1 week later. The sedan never came back. The login attempts stopped. The pressure vanished. Daniel and I had dinner alone that Sunday. No tension, no silence, just conversation. Robert started therapy, real therapy, not excuses. And Alyssa? She became something I never expected. Not just my daughter-in-law, but my ally. And sometimes I think back to that basement, that cold floor, that locked door. At the time it felt like betrayal, like humiliation, like punishment. But it wasn't. It was the moment the lies stopped, the moment secrets surfaced, the moment my family chose truth over comfort. My daughter-in-law locked me in the basement on my birthday, and at midnight, she didn't trap me. She saved us. And sometimes, the person you think is tearing your world apart is the only one holding it together.